Hi everybody, this week we are talking about fingerprints. This is probably one of the things you think about a lot when you think about forensic science. You probably think about collecting fingerprints. So we're going to talk this week about how they collect them and how they analyze them, what they can do with the information. It's pretty crazy. So in this lesson you're going to describe the procedures involved in fingerprint analysis. It's very straightforward. When you talk about fingerprints and you look at them real close, you're talking about things like major fingerprint patterns called arches, loops, whorls. I guess that's how you say that word. I want to say whorl, but it's more of a whorl, not an I but an O in there. And their subclasses. You'll also identify visible plastic and latent fingerprints, visible, plastic, and latent fingerprints. You'll also explain methods for lifting latent fingerprints from porous and non-porous objects using chemicals and fingerprint powders. And finally, you'll describe the features of the automatic fingerprint identification system. How cool does this sound, huh? Alright, let's see what we got. So you know that everybody has a unique fingerprint. I think even twins have a unique fingerprint. I'm not sure about it. Somebody should find that out for me. But fingerprints are impressions left behind by the friction edges located on the pads of our fingers and thumbs. Fingerprints follow three principles. Each one is unique and no two people have the exact same fingerprint pattern. Fingerprint pattern will not change, so you have the same pattern now as you did when you were, a baby. It can get changed if you get a scar across there, but then that's going to stay the same too, right? Fingerprints have general patterns that we can then systematically classify. These features make fingerprints an important piece of evidence, and based on the patterns, fingerprints are broadly classified into three types. The first type are called arches. So these arches are, as you can see right there, that's where you have like a plain old arch. It just kind of goes up a little bit, but sometimes people have a really high arch. They call it a tented arch, okay? And those things go way up. Now, only about 5% of the people in the world have arches. So they're a very unique thing. And remember, the whole goal here is to try to narrow down. I mean, I got a fingerprint, and I got to figure out who it belongs to. If you got arches, that automatically puts you into only about 5% of the population, so it helps us to narrow it down, right? But I think Americans have a higher than that. That's for the world, but I think Americans have higher than 5%. But, still it helps narrow it down, right? So here we have these loops, so they kind of go up and loop back around and come down. We have what's called a radial loop on the right hand, an ulnar loop on the right hand. And all that has to do is the direction. The radial loop goes this way, the ulnar loop goes this way. You could just have a plain old whorl. I mean, holy cow, look at that. It's just like a target right in the middle of it, right? You have a central pocket whorl, whatever that is. This is crazy. You have a double loop, one coming this way and one going this way. And then you have something called accidental, which I guess just covers everything else. But about 60% of the population have loops. Okay, look at the difference between loops and arches. Okay, arches just kind of go up and down. They're like humps, but loops come in from a side and go right back out. Okay, they don't continue all the way across. Whorls just make a big circle. They don't come in from a side or go out or anything. Okay, and about 35% of the human population have whorls. Now, this is a little thing for you to work on. All right, we got dots, something called a bifurcation. To bifurcate means to split. So right there where it splits, that's a bifurcation. So a trifurcation means it splits into three parts. Then you have an ending. This is where a ridge just stops. Okay, and then you have a ridge crossing where they kind of make a cross over each other, kind of like if this were a road, this would be a crossing right there. You have an enclosure. They also call it a lake, which is kind of silly because this is the lake and this is the island in the middle. You have a short ridge, which is just a little short, these are all lines and this is a short line here. You got a spur or a hook that just comes down. You got a bridge. You got a core. You have a delta, and a delta refers to the fact that it comes down here and then splits and goes this way and this way. An eye, because this is a weird looking shape, but it looks kind of like an eye. How weird is that, huh? And then I guess this just covers all the weird stuff, right? You got an S shape in there, a small hill, who knows. These are all different patterns that you can find inside of various people's fingerprints. And when you add them all up, you got a dot plus a bifurcation plus a lake plus a, whatever, an eye. You add all that up and it gives you your unique fingerprint. And that's why we say that people that have, everybody has a very unique fingerprint. So go figure, right? So here's your first assignment. How cool is this? Here's a fingerprint pattern. Look at it and tell me what you see. You should see three very clear, very distinct patterns on here. Now you don't have to tell me if it's a right hand or a left hand. Just give me the basic name and write it in there. Okay? And for part B, you do the same thing. You look at these characteristics. You can see, you got to look close, okay? But you can see, maybe, let's zoom in. Let's see if we can zoom in some. All right. But you see right there, it splits. Right there, it splits. There, it splits into 3 parts. There, it stops. Okay. So, right there, you have to come up and explain it. So 1, 2, and 3, just write it down. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Going on, self-evaluation. How do you think you did? And there you go. You just completed that part. Piece of cake, right? It's kind of fun, really. So there are a couple of types of fingerprint patterns. The ones that you really think of as fingerprint patterns are what we call patent fingerprints. There was something on it, like just the oil naturally from your skin, or some grease, or blood, or God, anything really. And when you touch something, it leaves a very clear, very visible fingerprint. This is called a patent fingerprint. You can see it right here with the blood on this switch. You don't have to do anything else. You can see it. You can take a picture of it. You can lift it with a pretty simple piece of cellophane. Latent fingerprints are a little more invisible. They're not easily to be seen. And when fingers touch an object, well, I'm going to read that wrong because I guess I had that backwards. The natural oils or the sweat that adhere to your finger ridges. I said that was up here, but I was wrong. The natural oils and sweat that appear on the finger ridges leave invisible fingerprints. Okay. When they touch an object, they leave an impression that mirrors the ridges. Latent fingerprints require processing to make them observable. Mostly you just kind of dust them with something. And we're going to spend some time talking about how they do that. And then you have plastic or molded fingerprints. They're what's left after, like, your finger got stuck into some kind of something like plastic, like wax or gum or sand or clay or soap, tar, wet paint. There's a print that's left in there too. Plastic prints don't need any processing for visibility, and you can see them with the naked eye. Latent fingerprints can be found all over the place. These surfaces are broadly classified into 3 types. There's porous. Now, porous would be things that aren't smooth. They're not. They got holes in them, kind of like kind of like a sponge, right? But maybe like think about like I don't know, like a rough surface of sandpaper or something. That's porous. Okay. Porous surfaces absorb liquids like cloth, paper, cardboard, untreated wood, rough brick, and so on. Rough brick is what I meant by like sandpaper. Believe it or not, you can get fingerprints off of cloth or paper or cardboard. I can't believe it, but you can. Non-porous surfaces don't absorb liquids, okay? And you got smooth ones like painted surfaces and glass, and you got rough ones like leather and vinyl, okay? So now that you know what we mean by those 3 types, remember we're lifting latent fingerprints. That's one of the 3 kinds. And there are 3 surfaces that we would get latent fingerprints on, okay? That's porous, non-porous smooth, and non-porous rough. Now, porous surfaces, we might do something like what they call iodine fuming. That takes solid iodine crystals and heat them up, and then you have this portable gun that you kind of just put the smoke from the heated iodine crystals on it, okay? And what happens is the vapor reacts with the oil residue in the fingerprint and produces a brown colored print. Excuse me. It doesn't last very long, but as long as you can get a picture of it, you're good. So you blow that stuff across there. I guess that's what this guy's doing. I don't know how healthy that is, but it works. And then you take a picture of it real fast, and then you have your print. It was invisible until you blew this iodine vapor across it. Okay. Silver nitrate is just a chemical. The chloride in the salt molecules of a fingerprint. So your sweat, full of salt, it's full of chloride. You touch something, the silver nitrate reacts to form silver chloride. It turns black or brown in UV light, and then you can see it. Um, it just works. I don't know. And then finally, something called anhydrine. You spray it like a squirt bottle or something, or you let it drip onto the surface, and it reacts with the amino acids. Now these are things that make proteins, amino acids. So they're all in the fluids that are on your fingerprint, and they react with this anhydrine to create a purple kind of a shape. And again, you can take a picture of that. So we've got three ways to get it off of these porous surfaces. Okay, and it's 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 a whole lot more than just get some chalk dust or something and put on it. There's a lot of ways that you can get these fingerprints. Now we have this thing called the automated fingerprint identification system, and once you get a picture or some other type of copy of the fingerprint, you can then upload it into this database, and then this thing, the AFIS, just starts looking for all those things like the whorls or the loops. Okay, and it identifies all of them, like that right there. That's a stop, and that's a bifurcation, or that's a spur right there. Okay, I don't know how well, you know what, let's zoom in a little bit. So it can identify things like a bifurcation or a spur. I hope you can see my pointer. Or a loop. And it finds all those, finds the location in all of those, and compares the location to the other ones, and creates basically a map. And then it digitizes that and searches for it, and if you're in the system, it'll find you. Now I'm in the system. I'm a school teacher. I have to get fingerprinted every 5 years, and I've done some other things that cause me to get fingerprinted. And so AFIS has my ID in it, and if I ever commit a crime, or if they ever lift my fingerprint from somewhere, they can tell that I've been there because it's unique. And it's kind of crazy. You go to the sheriff's department, they got this whole machine. They used to get ink all over your fingers, and they'd make you push it on there, but now they just kind of put your finger on this glass thing, and it's like a scanner, and it just scans it. It's crazy. Yeah, but it takes about 10 minutes. They do it every time you get arrested. They do it. And you know, and then there are certain government jobs that have to get fingerprinted. If you want a security clearance to go on a campus, you have to go get fingerprinted. So AFIS works a couple of ways. The first one is what we call 10 print. Now 10 print is like I told you, I go in and I get all 10 fingers scanned. That goes into a database. If I'm arrested, for example, if I just go crazy and I go out to Oklahoma or something, I rob a convenience store and I get arrested, they'll take my fingerprints, and that's called a 10 print, and then they'll put that in the database, and it should come right back with my name on it. So that's how they can find out your priors and stuff, even if you're in another. Heck, it's now worldwide. They can, you know, if I go to Korea and do something, they'll find it. I'm not going to go to Korea. Actually, I'm not going to go to Oklahoma either, but whatever. Another one is crime investigation. You can take parts of prints, or you can take latent prints from unsolved cases and run them through AFIS, and sometimes that can help you connect to a person that's there. The latent investigation, so we take single fingerprints and they help find them in the 10 print database. That can link you. And then AFIS also lets you take one crime scene print, and it can link into other unsolved case files. This may not help you go directly to a suspect, but it helps you link this crime with other crimes, and so that now you can find this person that's a serial crime, and now you can start investigating it that way. Well, you know, we know now more about this person because we linked them to other crimes. It's AFIS is pretty incredible for what it's able to let us do. So it really breaks down to two kinds. There's the 10 print, where you actually have the person there and you put their fingers on the screen and you get all 10 prints, and either that identifies them and matches them to a different database, or it's like, oh, there's no match found, so we create a history inside of there. And you know, if you're a suspect, then we create a based on, you know, what we find out about you. But if it's like me, like I'm in the AFIS system, it's because I went there and told them exactly who I was, and I said I want to be a school teacher, and so they put all that in there. And then there's the latent print identification. It helps you find out if you don't have the person there, you just have the print, like a picture of the print that you found at a crime scene. It helps you to find that as well. And that's it. That's all there is to fingerprint analysis. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was basically two parts. The first part was looking at the characteristics of a fingerprint and how we can get a fingerprint, and all the little parts for like helping us find, so you need to know all the different parts of the fingerprint, the whorls and the spurs and the bifurcations and things like that. You also need to know the processes that we use to get latent fingerprints off of porous and non-porous surfaces, and then you need to know about APHIS. And that's it. So that's the end of the tutorial.